It is June 24th, 2024, and as tensions continue to increase on the border between Israel and Lebanon, well, the British newspaper The Telegraph has apparently cracked the code as they have a new report out claiming that according to anonymous Lebanese whistleblowers that there are these mysterious large boxes coming to the airport in Beirut from Iran that are filled with weapons that they are sending to Hezbollah. If that sounds a little vague, confusing, and not very probable, that's because it is. And we were joined earlier by a special guest who actually went to the airport in Beirut to see things firsthand, to see if there is any merit to these claims coming from these anonymous sources that were quoted by the Telegraph. And he specifically noted that the ambassadors from the US and the UK were invited on this visit, but they chose not to show up to investigate. I guess they've got to run with that story just for a little bit longer. We discussed all that and more earlier, so let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Laith Marouf, a Palestinian-Syrian journalist and political commentator who joins us from Beirut. Laith, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I want to get your take on the latest here. I know that we've been talking about these ongoing tensions on the border between Israel and Lebanon, but the British newspaper The Telegraph put out this article claiming that Hezbollah is using Lebanon's international airport in Beirut to store large quantities of Iranian weapons. And the information comes from these anonymous Lebanese whistleblowers, as they call them. Now, I know that you actually went to the airport in question to investigate these claims. Can you take us through what you found versus what is stated in that article?
Yeah, what's amazing about this article is the Telegraph put a blank for the byline, so we don't even know who wrote it. So here is a newspaper that is scared of revealing not only who its sources are, but who is writing it. Today, under invitation of the Minister of Transport and Minister of Information, media were invited to come to the airport, and I was one of the people there. There was hundreds of media there, and we got to enter multiple parts of the back end of the airport. That includes a section of the cargo delivery and receiving that is only dedicated for flights coming from Iran. So the authorities in Lebanon, knowing that there is such scrutiny to anything that comes from Iran, already separate the flights coming from Iran for a different hangar. And we went through the hangar with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Information, Transportation, and Communication, plus at least 12 ambassadors that arrived during this tour. By the way, the British ambassador and the American ambassador were invited. Both of them didn't show up. So here's the British ambassador that's supposed to be defending the whatever was published in a major newspaper in his country, just not showing up for this tour. We got to also see the main cargo facilities. We went through multiple hangars, and we got toured around all the perimeter fence of the airport. We were shown that every 5 meters there's a camera, every 500 meters there's a guards tower, full military, cement tower, and it's clear that it's impossible to smuggle anything through this airport because there's so much eyes on it, and that it is definitely not a Hezbollah hotbed. Hezbollah, if they want to smuggle weapons, which they do always, they will smuggle them from the land or the sea, which is much easier to do.
Okay, that's good to know. And that's really interesting about the fact that the British ambassador and, of course, the American ambassador didn't even show up, because I feel like, as you were pointing out there, the story is so vague, right? We don't know who wrote it. We don't know who these supposed whistleblowers are. And then even in their description of this, so they're said to be these airport workers who I guess are raising the alarm about what they described as mysterious large boxes that arrive at the airport on flights from Iran. They're saying that they contain weapons, but I guess, is the goal for it to be intentionally vague and also to go to Western audiences where we've never been to the airport in Beirut, so we would not know what things look like. And anyone who is already going to be suspicious of Iran is just going to hop on board with saying, oh, yeah, that sounds likely. We're going to believe, I guess, whoever these so called whistleblowers are.
Yes, yes. So the ministers, when they spoke during the press conference, so they said that they have already initiated the procedures to sue the Telegraph. And the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lebanon said that he authorized the ambassador of Lebanon in the United Kingdom to pursue these legal proceedings for libel and defamation, but also that if the Israelis attack the airport of Beirut, then the Telegraph will be also held responsible for that. This is very important. This is probably why the Telegraph hid the names of those who wrote it, because this is actionable in a crime, in a court of war crimes. If this airport is attacked, it shows that the Telegraph was part of inflaming this propaganda to get the airport to be targeted and give us justification for that for the Zionists. I would say also looking at, you can watch our report that's coming out tonight on our socials. Freepalestine.video is the website. You can find the socials there. And clearly, if you watch this video, or if you were among the hundreds of journalists that were there, it will be noticeable that there's everything is very open. There's multiple layers of security. There's the internal security services, the airport security services, the military. There's the United Nations in the airport, and they have their own hangar also. And while we were filming all of this, an American military cargo plane landed in the airport. What is this military American cargo plane carrying, if not weapons for some group on Lebanese territory? And do you want to tell me that it got searched the way that the Iranian flights were getting searched? Definitely not. It is the Americans that are smuggling weapons, the Germans that are smuggling weapons through the airport. And they were caught a few months ago, German security services, arming some of their citizens and their diplomatic premises with weapons that haven't been vetted with the Lebanese government. So we know that the Western governments are the ones that are smuggling weapons through the airport of Beirut.
Wow, and that's something that I feel like isn't talked about at all, at least here in the West. When it comes to the current tensions there in Beirut right now, I think that there's this push to kind of think, oh, it's, Hezbollah and those who support Hezbollah versus everybody else. But what are those different tensions like at play there? And are there multiple sides and multiple, I guess, approaches to the current conflict? Obviously, you're going to have some people who, want to go in and bomb Israel, some people who really don't want any conflict and are trying to push it off. But I guess, what is the mood like there right now?
Well, the mood is very much in support of resistance as a whole. Maybe some people don't want full war in Lebanon, but obviously, Lebanon, the people here are just like the rest of humanity. They've been watching 9 months of genocide playing out on their social media day in, day out. And here in Lebanon, we're right on the border, so that adds even more. And the fact that there is Palestinian refugees here, there's intermarriage with Palestinians. So it adds to the personification of the feelings of what is happening in the genocide. But, Lebanese people are like the rest of humanity and are not happy with seeing genocide being committed and not being able to do something about it. So if there was any criticism to Hezbollah, the Islamic resistance, fighting the Zionists on the border in South Lebanon with the border of Palestine, in the beginning of this war on October 7th, there is not much of it now. The only people that we see, making public statements against Hezbollah's actions on the border are already have been in support of the Zionist colony and have been at on the payroll of the American embassy for decades, and there's nothing to change their mind. They don't even have any human consciousness or feeling for their own compatriots, the Lebanese people that are being martyred on the border every time the Israelis attack civilian locations in the south of Lebanon.
Yeah, it's always interesting how the West always seems to have versions of proxies everywhere that they go, even when it doesn't make sense, at least for the people there at home. Now, I wanted to go back to a point that you were making earlier, which is kind of about the possibility of, okay, we have this Telegraph report. Could we see an Israeli military attack on the airport in Beirut? Because the Telegraph, they specifically went to the IDF, right? And the IDF released a statement and they said, oh, well, if Hezbollah were to target Israeli civilians from these sites, then the IDF would have no choice but to react, potentially placing Lebanese civilians in harm's way, causing international outrage toward the IDF. It's so interesting to me that they include that last part because I feel like the international outrage is already there. But is this the IDF kind of laying the groundwork for, well, I don't know, if we happen to bomb the airport there, then we had a reason. You clearly saw this report beforehand, or is there more to it?
Well, clearly, it's been now weeks that we're seeing a buildup of, threatening statements coming from the Zionist entity and all its Western supporters. But nothing's happened beyond, of course, escalations. There has been escalation of intensity and the size of the weapons that are used. But I think, given the fact that Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, over the last year has, repeated multiple times that an attack on the airport of Beirut will mean an attack on the Ben Gurion airport in Tel Aviv. I doubt that the Zionists will do this without direct American approval and knowing that the United States will come to directly be involved in this military confrontation with Hezbollah. The videos that came from Hezbollah last week, that Hudhud or Hoppo video, 9.5 minutes of a drone flying over the most sensitive locations around Haifa and the Haifa port and the military industrial zone around Haifa, that shows that Hezbollah can destroy the most sensitive locations in the Zionist colony, and it's not the same level of playing field as it is in Gaza. It's a small location, blocked off, that doesn't have support backline. Hezbollah has just in the last 8 months used something like 20,000 ATGMs. These are numbers that for them, if to use ATGMs this often to hit the Israeli surveillance equipment on the border, they're using it like popcorn, basically. For them, it's just like pop shots. So imagine in a big war what Hezbollah can do. Definitely the Israelis can destroy the airport of Beirut, but Hezbollah can do as much damage, if not more.
Yeah, it seems like that's something I'm sure they're taking that into account, but it doesn't feel like they are from some of the public statements we get from Israeli officials, such as Netanyahu, who spoke out on Sunday, and he said that the quote, intense phase of the war with Hamas is about to end, and that the military's focus could then shift to Israel's northern border, where fighting with Hezbollah has intensified in recent weeks. Yet, I mean, they clearly have not defeated Hamas. And as we've talked about, if they are to go to an all-out war with Hezbollah, that would not be good for Israel. That would put the U.S. in this place where it would likely step in, but it may show some resistance to that. At least I would hope so. But are we really in a place where you think that Netanyahu could make that shift towards, oh, let's focus on war with Hezbollah, even when Hamas very clearly has not been defeated in Gaza?
Well, if we take it from war games perspective and analyze it from, games theory, right? War games theory, and you look at it, the Zionists have only one strategic objective, okay, which is to maintain the colony, the maintenance of it. And so what tactical maneuvers do they have in front of them? There's only two. One is admitting defeat, having a complete ceasefire and a complete exchange of prisoners of war. That's option one. Option two is full genocide or zero sum game, meaning either total genocide of the Palestinian people or total defeat of the Israeli military. There's no third option in front of them. And we've seen for the last 7 months, 8 months, almost 9 months now, that every time the Zionists are reminded that they're defeated, maybe it's time to stop and have a ceasefire, they go and choose number two and escalate. So why is because the Zionists themselves know that the minute they stop this war, there will be an internal collapse of the Zionist colony. There's already right now the multiple wings of the politics are cannibalizing each other. There's a fight between the political wing and the military. The military a few days ago coming out and serving generals saying that you can't defeat Hamas. That's a complete opposite to what the political wing of the government is saying. And that's almost like mutiny. You can never, as a serving general, say something opposite to your elected officials. And so we see that. We see inside the military itself, the units that are been rounded up by Ben Gvir and Smotrich, ultra-fascists, are mutinying against their officers. They're continuing to purposefully film themselves, commit genocide, or put on women's lingerie, although they're getting orders from their generals not to do that. So there's now multiple levels of internal collapse that is unmendable. Okay, and so the minute the Zionist colony stops this war, it's going to collapse, and that is why it is very likely that Netanyahu and the Zionist elite as a whole will drive Israel into a war with Lebanon in order to have the Americans come save this colony from itself.
Yeah, and that is a really interesting point there because I think a lot of times we just focus in on Netanyahu and on the fact that, oh, well, if he were to end things tomorrow, right? If there were peace tomorrow and he would be in a position where he would then have to face corruption charges. But it's really interesting to kind of think about the entire Israeli government, the place that they are currently in. And when you have those ultra fascists who are pushing for just complete genocide, right? They want to see the entire Gaza Strip wiped out. How do you see their influence currently? And then I guess the United States side, which seems to be, we're not ready for war, for full-on war with Iran yet. So let's kind of hold back a little bit. But at the same time, the US is still providing just enough weapons for Israel to keep doing what it did this weekend, where they killed at least 100 Palestinians in a 24-hour period.
Yes, yes. I mean, if we look back just last week with the resignation of the Minister of Defense and the architect of the Dahiya doctrine, Eisenkot, who was a minister without portfolio in the cabinet of Netanyahu, their resignation indicated that the Dahiya doctrine didn't work. The architect of it and the guy that implemented it said, I can't do this, and they walked away. What does this mean? So the Dahiya doctrine entails destruction of 80% of residential neighborhood in order to put pressure on the civilians so they can pressure the politics to stop the war. And they already did that in Gaza, and it didn't work. So what is next? Once Eisenkot and Gallant are out, the only people that have an option in front of for Netanyahu to play with is Ben Gvir and Smotrich, which are asking for 100% destruction, 100% genocide. And that is the only option left in front of them if we again go back to looking at war games theory. So that's how it's playing out. But now we have the fight between Netanyahu and Ben Gvir and Smotrich, where he dissolved the cabinet. He's ruling as a indirect rule with no cabinet help. He's the one making all the decision. He's an emperor now, and he's asking that if if Ben Gvir and Smotrich want to be in the cabinet meeting, that they should be searched for bugs, that they should do lie detector tests after they leave because he's scared of all the leaks that they're doing, and they claim that he's doing that, so they want also the same. So even the ultra fascist wing is cannibalizing itself. So there's not much of a political class that can bring cohesion in the Zionist colony, and there is no military class also that can bring cohesion. And this is why we will see the United States being dragged in. And given that, I'm sorry, I'm ranting on this, but given that Biden is senile, given that his vice president doesn't have control of anything, given that the Minister of Defense of the United States, the Secretary of Defense, nobody knows if he's alive or not, or what's his health. It's truly that it's Blinken that is running the United States with no checks or balances on him. And he's back and forth directly talking to Netanyahu. So this relationship of Netanyahu and Blinken is what's going to decide the future of this region.
Yeah, that's incredibly scary to think about, I would say, especially considering the fact that, I mean, I remember when Antony Blinken became Secretary of State, and I was sitting there going, this is the guy. I mean, he's the one where Lloyd Austin, the defense secretary, when he was of good health, he would have to follow up anytime it was something Ukraine related. He would always have to go and take care of things because Blinken never seemed to do it right. Now, Blinken has been on 7, 8 trips to the Middle East, and that never seems to even go well for the Biden administration on their end. But when it comes to what you're contrasting that with, you have, as you were pointing out there, you have this Israeli cabinet that has fallen apart. You also have civilians in Israel that are fleeing like crazy. I mean, I saw a number of posts on Twitter or X over the weekend about people, and it's like, yeah, most of these people have dual passports, so they're going to go to their other country, right? They're not going to stick it out here and wait to see if war erupts. But contrasting that to the people of Lebanon, to the members of Hezbollah who have spent the last 8 months watching genocide play out in Gaza, watching it be committed by Israel with the help of the United States, they are going to become more hardened, more ready for battle, and a more united front on their end. Do you think that that's something that's being taken into account by Israel, and how does Hezbollah see this fight?
Yeah, you're right in terms of the Zionists. Anybody that doesn't have roots or has a double passport is leaving. Numbers tell us just the day after the release of that 9.5-minute video by Hezbollah, 62,000 Israelis left in one day at Ben Gurion, and it's the highest number in one day that's recorded. So clearly, also we know there's shortages of doctors. Anybody with high education that can be mobile and has some money has left. Anybody that has second passport has left. So up until now, we don't have real numbers from the Zionist colony, but some people are claiming around 1 million have already left out of the 7 million Jewish colonists in Palestine. So that's a huge number. Compare it to the south of Lebanon, and I've been visiting almost every 2 days. I go down to the south to see the villages, and we film reports from there. The frontline villages are the ones that have been, kind of abandoned the most, but there's still people in them. I went to Khiam. Half of the village is facing an Israeli military outpost, and you can't even enter it. They'll shoot anything that walks. But the other half that's hidden behind the hill, people are still there. And you look at all the second line villages now is where Lebanese have moved if they have left their frontline villages. They're not even moving far away from their towns. In comparison, almost all of the Galilee in North Palestine is empty right now. The Israeli numbers themselves admit around 300,000 settlers have left and have no intention of ever coming back. So there is clearly, what Hezbollah is doing is working. And of course, after almost 9 months of their actions on the ground, having cleared up all the surveillance equipment that the Israelis have on the border, having destroyed all the Iron Dome batteries and the radars and so on. Hezbollah's attacks now are reaching further. They know exactly where the blind spots are for any of the radars and air defense systems. And this is why they're hitting targets as far as Haifa with swarms of drones that nothing is able to intercept. Yes, Hezbollah has learned a lot over the last 9 months. And if a full-out war happens, I think they will reach the West Bank within hours. I think we will see the destruction of all of the Israeli military airfields within the first hours, because Hezbollah does not want to allow Israel to apply the Dahi doctrine here as they're doing in the Gaza.
Yeah, I know that there is certainly a lot at stake here all around, and a lot that we will continue to keep an eye on. And I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today to break down the latest. Laith Marouf, a Palestinian-Syrian journalist and political commentator, thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. If you want to support my work, you can also check out my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/rachelblevins. That's where you can sign up as a monthly paid subscriber and join the community there. As always, thank y'all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.